Want to hear some inside scoop? If your kids are as ready to go back to school as mine are, you gotta check out Kohl's. I got my daughters the cutest sew tops for under $18, JanSport backpacks for 25% off, and 30% off Levi's jeans for me. I even saved an extra 15% and picked up Kohl's cash. So, yeah, not sure who's more excited right now, me or the girls. Select styles, 15% offer ends August 15th. Levi's coupons do not apply. Some exclusions apply. See store Kohl's.com for details.
Summer happens at Speedway because everything you need for summer happens at Speedway. Like drinks. Drinks happen. The freshly brewed drink, the splashed over ice drink, the wake you up drink, the cool you off drink, the make your brain hurt for a minute drink. All poured however you want them, whenever you want them, all summer long. So on every hot day, you have something cold to sip. Speedway. Summer happens here. And now, get any size fountain or Speedy Freeze for just 99 cents. Excludes maximum.
One outer limit of where the lions are, and he sort of was tracking them and sort of knew where they were. So I had to actually cycle past where there was a lioness and cub, which was kind of like, you'll have to see the film.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Gravely. Today's episode really gets me excited because to me it is just pure adventure. It is an amazing place, a faraway land for most of us, and it's doing something really difficult in that place and something amazing. Kate Leeming is joining us. She has recently bicycled the entire Namibian coastline, which is called the Skeleton Coast. And the reason it's called the Skeleton Coast is because, there's a lot of skeletons there for one, but it is, just imagine for a second, the Sahara Desert disappearing into the ocean. Just the dunes fall right off. The wind is blowing sand directly into the ocean as far north and south as the eye can see along the shore. So it's just massive sand dunes. No plants, no animals, no communities, no anything other than the random whale skeleton or the random barge ship that washed up on shore 30 years ago and is just rotting there. That's it. That's all that's out there. Other than, get this, other than lions, literally African lions that walk up and down the shore hunting sea lions. It's the only place in the world where lions enter the water, enter the ocean to hunt. Nowhere else on the planet does that happen. Isn't that crazy for a second? Just think about that. Lions hunting along the ocean shore, along the beach sand. It's just mind-blowing to me. And Kate decided, it's never been done before, decided to ride her bicycle from the north end to the south end, seeing something that none of us probably will ever see in our lifetime. Very few, but I thought it was an incredible experience. Kate, I encourage you to look her up. Kate Leeming has been on the show before, actually, to talk about some of her other expeditions, but she has done things that are just, for the last 30 years, she has been cycling around the world, literally around the world, doing some of the longest experiences I've ever heard about, 20, 25,000, 30,000 kilometer bike rides over many, many, many months, even years, seeing the world and experiencing. I think it's absolutely incredible. And get this, she stopped her bicycle career at one point because she fell in love with the game of tennis, decided to become a pro at tennis, got her fill of that, and then got back into the adventure world. She has yet to do her biggest feat that she is looking forward to, which is to bicycle across Antarctica, which will be coming, and we'll definitely have her back on the show when she does that. But without further ado, I'd love to get to Kate, but we actually need to talk about one of our sponsors first. But I know I'm talking for a while here. I just wanted to set up just how crazy this place is. The Skeleton Coast, definitely look it up. I was just blown away by pictures, by some of the things I saw, and then listening to Kate's story, I'm like, what a cool place. What a cool thing to do. But anyway, let's talk about the sponsor real quick. Today's sponsor is Expedia's Expedia, Expedia, the travel company, well, their podcast, which is called I'll Travel the System. So with, any adventure, you're obviously going to have to travel there. Not always, but a lot of times, not a lot of us live on the Namibian coastline. So if you want to go do an adventure there, you're going to need to travel there. So traveling can be very stressful. Travel can be, just part of the logistics of an adventure that are really difficult to overcome. And a lot of times it's that part alone that keeps people from doing stuff. So listening to a podcast, getting inspired by stories is really important. So I encourage you to check out Travel the System by Expedia. It's a show all about basically giving you, concrete steps on what to do, how to travel, give you inspiration through stories of people, traveling around the world or trying to go to every country in the world, hearing from airline pilots. It's just stories about travel. It even interviews people on the other side of travel, the people at our destinations, interviews them to hear what it's like from their perspective to have people come to where they live all the time. So it's really interesting. And so, pandemic or not, it's a really great episode. And if you're not able to travel right now, hopefully you will be soon. And this will help you keep, stay inspired to do so. So again, it is Out Travel the System by Expedia. Pull out your podcast app, check it out. Let's get into this episode. Get inspired. All right, here's Kate. Just want to welcome you, Kate Leeming. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mason. Nice to be with you, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we were talking a little bit before, but this is always my very first question. Where are you coming from today, and where's home for you?
Yeah, I'm living in Melbourne, originally from near Perth, a farm near Perth in Western Australia, but I live in Melbourne now. So, I'm, it's coming into winter and it's sort of raining and a bit grey outside, but that's where I am.
Is that a typical winter in Australia, grey and rainy?
Australia's about the same size as the US, so you get a bit of everything depending where you are. Like it's very interchangeable in Melbourne, the weather, so it's actually quite famous for being sort of sunshine and rain all in one day. So
a lot of places like that in the U.S. as well. But yeah, you're right. It's almost scary how identical in size they are, and just how much it varies. But I'd love to hear where did you grow up? You said you were from Perth. Did you grow up for a while in that area? And what kind of things did you do as a kid? Were you into adventure, or did you find it later in life?
Yeah, no, I was. So I grew up on a farm which is about 85 miles east of Perth, and so it's like the nearest neighbours 3.5 kilometres away, 3.5 miles away. I mean, converting to miles for you. So it was a wheat and sheep farm, and I was a very good all-round sports person, which is kind of where some of my attitude probably comes from. But I didn't really have the confidence growing up to do that kind of thing. It was all about competition in I think I represented my state in 4 different sports. So it was only when I actually went to travel and went to Europe, originally playing field hockey. And after that, that was my opportunity to see the world. And I'd been sort of into cycling, as a way of keeping fit in Australia. And then when I went over there, I just really, I'd already dreamed of cycling in Italy or France and thought that would be amazing. And then after the hockey tour, I organised a little trip in Ireland with a friend. And then after that, it grew from there, really. That's where the seeds were sown. I did in total about 15,000 kilometres, so 9,000 miles through Europe over the next couple of years, just as my personal discovery. And that's really where I learned about cycling and really discovered my passion and what I could do as well. And so it's little trips led to bigger trips, more ambitious. And, I guess the passion is really about, I love the way that how connected you are with the people and the land. And I love bringing a line on a map to life. And I really, cycling, I think, particularly, or walking could do the same thing, but gives a great sense of place and a perspective of how the world fits together. And, I just love getting to places under my own steam. I can remember everything, all the photographs, all the stories. It just means so much more. So that's how I kind of got into it, I guess. That was, I hate to say it, but that was 30 years ago. So,
Oh, man. So tell me this: what was the world of bike touring like? Were there a lot of people doing it, or were you constantly having to explain to people what it is you're doing?
well, in Europe, it's probably the best place to start because, especially in many of those countries, cycling is just such an important part of their culture, especially in France and Italy and Spain. It's just awesome. And so people, the friendliness of people are kind. It's a very safe way of traveling too. People really respect you, give you food, all too, happy to give directions or, help out. It's just part of the culture, whereas other places it's less part of the culture. So you stand out a little bit more, but pretty well everywhere it just draws kindness and friendliness, and people are just, and it's kind of quite a humble way of traveling, and I think people are very always amazed at the effort you're going to see their part of the world. They want to really show you. So that's kind of what I get out of it. Plus, you get pretty fit and you can eat a lot, and in Europe's pretty good for that as well.
Right, lots of good food in Europe. I guess guess they need the bike paths for just to stay in shape. But that's really cool. Now, I think you're glossing over a pretty incredible experience, pretty big experience. Back when you were in the early days of doing this, which is the Trans-Siberian Cycle Expedition. Am I mistaken that was probably one of your biggest first experiences?
Yeah. So I guess I'm known for sort of three very big expeditions, but the first main one was the Trans-Siberian Cycle Expedition. So this was back in 1993 when Russia was changing it from the Soviet Union to the CIS, and it was just possible to cycle. I designed this expedition from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok. There's a road actually going through that sort of the swamp area in eastern Siberia now, but then there wasn't. We had to follow the Trans-Siberian Railway line, myself and my friend Greg Yeoman, and then we always had a Russian with us as well. So we were pushing, that was our route through. So pushing along the railway line when it went underwater, when there were rivers or when it was swampy and everything went underwater. So pushing along the railway line, and that was our way to navigate. And there were little winter tracks along the side that were quite usable for most of the time, or forestry tracks. And then there were little villages, that all the villages were along the railway line every 30, 40 kilometers. So, and it's a bit safer because there's bears out there. So, but not really so much along the railway line because that's not safe for bears either. So this was, that was back. Yeah, it was just such an incredible snapshot in time because, growing up, it was the Soviet Union and it was this place that, we were fed all sorts of information as they were about us. And yet, they were such almost embarrassingly friendly people, just would give you whatever they had, really supportive, loved the idea of cycling. But in communist times, we would have been heroes in each town and treated as such by the mayor. So we used to stop, find the town leader, they would look after us, and then we'd get to the next place, 130, 140, 50 kilometers down the road, and it'd be the same thing again. So it was just a magical experience to cycle, especially across Siberia. That was 4 months of it, through Siberia. And just seeing this incredible, the largest country in the world. And I guess that changed, my confidence changed between Europe, traveling through Europe for myself, and the Russian expedition, because I met a fellow who really inspired me, a guy called Robert Swan, who's the first person in history to have walked to both the North and South Poles. And I explained what I was thinking of doing, and he just gave me a lot of confidence, and that's how I kind of stepped it up. And everything I've done since Europe, so Russia was the first one, was about supporting the people and places that I traveled to as well. I realized there's much more of a value to what I was doing than just simply riding a bike. So the Russian expedition was, I also aided children affected by the Chernobyl disaster, which had only happened like 7 years before that. So now we're thinking, it was a long time ago, which it is now, but it's still, then it was in the forefront of people's minds even more. So that was the first big one, and it was 13,400 kilometers, or I think 8,304 miles or something like that. And we got there basically ahead of the Russian winter. It was done during the summer from the 1st of May, and got there a day ahead of schedule after 5 months. So it was, it was something that can't really be replicated, not in that time especially. So that was the Trans-Siberian. Then I didn't do any adventuring for 10 years because I discovered the game of real tennis, or in the US it's called court tennis, which is the original game of tennis. I was working in a health club in London. I discovered this game, and after 2 years I got pretty good at it, became a professional. And so I was really, that was my next adventure really. It wasn't out there, it was a different thing. I was pushing myself as a sports person, as a professional sports person, and that's still the other thing that I do. But now I'm not really competing in the same way. I'm more coaching and doing all the very specific things that a real tennis professional does. So that game is played in basically in 4 countries in the world: in the US, in Australia, the UK, and France. In France, it's called Jeu de Paume, and it's a very magical little world. There's about 12,000 people in the world who play. So that's what I'm doing when I'm not writing. But then when I came back to Australia, I really wanted to see how my own country matched up. Once I was ready, I was working as a professional here in Melbourne. That's why I came to Melbourne. But then I organised the Great Australian Cycle Expedition. So I'd seen lots of other parts of the world, but I wanted to see how my own country matched up. And this was 25,000 kilometres, so in miles, 17. Right. So you think mainland Australia is about the same size as mainland US if you take Alaska out. And if you go around the edge of Australia, it's about, I'm going to speak in Ks now because I can't convert to miles all the time.
No, our listeners are used to it, so you feel free to stick to what you're most comfortable with. All
right, so if you go around the edge of Australia, it's about 14,000 if you stay on Highway number 1, but 25,000 kilometres involved 5 major off-road tracks in remote desert areas, including the Cape York Peninsula up to the very far north, across the Gulf Track, through the Tanami Desert, across the Great Central and Gun Barrel Highway, and then the big thing was up the Canning Stock Route. And the Canning Stock Route's like the world's longest stock route. It's about 1,800 kilometres long, and there's about 1,000 sand dunes. And this is on a regular mountain bike. Anyone since me who's done it, they do it now using a fat bike, which kind of changes the game. And if I had a fat bike, I would have been doing it on a fat bike then. But it was just, it's a very spiritual place for me. Just the development of this stock route and what it stood for, and the pioneers that built it, including one of my great uncles who reconditioned it in 1929. So it was kind of like, just the Canning Stock Route, but also the whole of the journey was really just understanding how my own country fits together. And, it was quite incredible having done like over 17,000 kilometres and cycling into the back gate of my home farm, having cycled all the way from Canberra at that point, and connecting it all up. So that was very special. I wrote a book about that called Out There and Back, and that was my first book. So this was changing things as well. This expedition was about looking at education for sustainable development, and it was picked up by the United Nations actually as one of the first projects for their decade of education for sustainable development. And so now I was adding a different purpose to what I was doing. And then that book also led to speaking, so new opportunities. So each time I've been doing these major expeditions, I'm kind of stepping it up with the other things that I do around it to really create more value out of it. And you sort of realize it's great to be able to do adventures, but to be able to share those adventures and to be able to inspire others, and to be able to, that's just as important. And it's very important for my motivation as well. From there, I would always been fascinated by Africa, and I was really sort of wanting to cycle there, but didn't really have the confidence, mainly because people had always said, oh, Africa, you'll die, it's dangerous, it's this, that, blah, blah, blah. But I knew other people cycled there. So I now was ready to step it up. And I was looking at Africa thinking, what would be the best expedition I could do? And because I'm also an educator, I'm a qualified teacher, and I was looking at the importance of education across Africa, and I was looking at a map showing illiteracy, and you can see this band of countries sort of running across the base of the Sahara through the Sahel region from west to east. And that's how I started this idea of cycling from the most westerly tip to the most easterly tip, from Senegal to Somalia. And then I looked at the reasons why there were problems with education. It was all related to extreme poverty. So that journey became actually exploring the causes and effects of extreme poverty, but the positives and what's been done to give a leg up rather than a handout. So basically I went through 20 countries. I didn't go exactly straight across because I was trying to tell the story. That my route actually reflects the story I was telling. I was hooking up with different projects. I think I visited 15 different projects during the journey as well. So I had to time everything to make all of this work. It was 22,000 kilometers, 22,040 kilometers in a continuous line, which we believe is the first time anyone's done that whole journey in a continuous line from the most westerly tip in Senegal to the most easterly tip, which is in Puntland in Somalia. And, it was amazing. I arrived there 4 days ahead of schedule after 10 months. And it's probably the most life-changing expedition, I'd say, of all of them.
Why is that? Why was that one so impactful?
Because to cross the most diverse continent on Earth, to see so many different cultures, there's so much that people don't know, and to traveling by bike really enabled me to put it into a different context, this very grounded context and perspective. And sort of coming in always the level of the people, because I'd seen, I also was visiting different projects, so people could actually, it wasn't just cycling past, I was stopping and people were there to explain what the situation was. Often there were little projects, some were bigger, some of it was a little bit, it's heartbreaking at times, but there was just so many strong characters and so much range. Logistically, that was very tough to organise. That one was my first supported expedition because I was wanting to make a film about it. And I realised that I couldn't film it myself, not with all the different things that I needed to do and all the interactions and things. So that became logistically very tricky because suddenly there's a support vehicle and that opens another can of worms. Whereas before I was cycling basically on my own or with a friend. So this was quite different again, and a different way that it's done. So yeah, for lots of reasons, it was just incredible. And I wrote a book and made a film about it. And we're still looking to finish off a TV series about that one as well. I can't let it go. I had a filmmaker in Ireland and he's just never finished it off. And I'm kind of at a stalemate, but I've got someone else very keen to now make the series. And if you take the dates out, because it's a little bit old, but it's really relevant still. And it's a great story of adventure.
That's interesting because, for a lot of folks, a lot of people we talk to, it feels like the one that really sticks out to them is their first big adventure because there's so many feelings that you experience for the first time. And it's usually not, the adventures that have a film crew. So to hear you say that was the one that changed you the most or that was the most impactful is very interesting to hear. Well,
they're different and they're all great. And each one, like often people say, what's your favorite adventure? I always just say the last one because like I kind of thought of that last one without all of the other experiences before that. So it's like I'm growing from Europe and then, stepping up the Russian one. I mean, it was really special. It was amazing. And, in fact, cars, you couldn't be done supported because cars couldn't get through where we're getting through that 1,500 kilometers of swamp. Cars couldn't get through there. So only bicycles, in fact, not even motorbikes could get through there in the summer. So that was really special for lots of other reasons. But I think that the difference with the African one was also being supported made it different, because although I did everything in a continuous line, if I needed to go off somewhere to see something and it was 200 kilometers off the route, I could still do that and then come back and start the line. So it gave a bit more flexibility, and it didn't mean I worked any less. It was actually more difficult to put together being supported than unsupported, and it cost about 4 times as much. So to make it happen was by far the hardest thing. It was a much bigger budget over that a period of time. So to make it happen was very difficult. And then the hardest thing about the journey was actually managing the team. It wasn't Africa. I'm out there on a bike, yet I have to manage a team, and I had to learn quite a bit about that as well. Not everyone was always the right people for the job, but it was very difficult when we're under very different circumstances. So, I mean, all of that was a learning process, how to get that story out that's meaningful to other people. And I guess I was able to get a little bit deeper because I was visiting all these different projects as well. So it changed that side of it. And one's not better than the other. It just depends what you're trying to do with, whether it's supported or unsupported. It just depends what I'm trying to do with the expedition. I've still done more recently. I've done both, mostly because I'm trying to film it. It's been supported, but as I said, that requires different things. And supported doesn't necessarily mean I've got a car sitting next to me all the time either. They're often off doing other things, and I'm riding alone. So, and I usually ride with extra bags on my bike, so I'm equipped so that if we do get separated, I can still manage okay. So that's it. It's different. If people think of you differently, whether you've got a bike packed with bags or not as well. And certainly they treat you with more intrigue when you've got a bike loaded with bags. So, just making sure that I'm carrying my cameras and my sleeping bag and food and water and that kind of thing. It's kind of, it means you're not 100% dependent on the support crew.
You just wrapped up a lot of experiences, a lot of miles, and many years of planning and cycling of your life. All of those trips are worthy of 1 or 2 or multiple episodes of this show, which makes it difficult to interview somebody like you, because it's like, well, oh my gosh, where do you even begin? The amount of things you've seen and experienced, so incredible. How have you been able to do this with your lifestyle, take off this much time? I think people are always interested in that part, just because they don't know where to start in their own lives.
Well, all of the ones that I've explained so far have been job ending. So, because they're that big. So, I've had to leave my work twice at the Royal Melbourne Tennis Club because for the Australian one and then the African one. But now I've got a different situation. So because most of my journeys have been a bit shorter, but if I explain, I'm actually, my next real serious goal is to cycle across Antarctica via the South Pole. So ever since the African expedition, or since I wrote a book and so on and so forth, after that, I've been working towards this idea. And first, back in 2013, I was just trying to work out, whether it's possible, what kind of bike I needed. I have no experience of the extreme cold. I'm good at the extreme heat, but not the extreme cold. So I got a team of experienced people, Australia's best polar explorer, Eric Phillips, a fantastic adventure cameraman, a filmmaker, Claudio Von Planter. If you ever think of Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman's motorbike journeys, long way round, long way down, now long way up. He's the director of photography on those.
Oh, wow.
That's what people know him from. But I connected with him before the African journey. And then I thought, I'll just ask him, see if he'd be interested in, or know of someone who could maybe start filming the Antarctic expedition. And he said, I'd like to do that. So, okay. so Claudia and I remained friends, and he's actually come out on 3 of my polar training expeditions, filming them. And another chap, also a photographer, filmmaker. So we went up to Svalbard, and the bike itself you might find pretty interesting. I was trying to think, okay, yes, you need a fat bike. Anyone who's done this canning stock route or since me has used a fat bike. I thought, okay, so you need a fat bike for the snow because you need the fatter tires to create sort of float over the snow as much as possible. But then I discovered, I went to North America, because obviously you deal much more with those kind of conditions, the snow and the cold, because I was a bit nervous about doing that in Australia. So to cut a very long story short, I ended up connecting with a guy in Philadelphia, Steve Christini, who'd made an all-wheel drive mountain bike. And it was the only system that looked to be robust enough for the kind of conditions I was going to put it under. And it's a shaft drive system. It's quite like it's not external chains or anything. It's actually built into the frame, and it sort of starts with a gear opposite the drivetrain at the back on the rear hub, and basically turns a rod that drives through the frame basically essentially up. The seats stay across the top tube, crosses over at the head tube, and then sort of drives a rod that runs parallel to the front wheel to drive the cog. If that makes sense.
I'm actually looking at a picture, and I'm following along while you're talking. And that's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, and it seemed, and it's really like it's an amazing piece of engineering because you think that would be difficult to push. But it's not, and it really is truly all-wheel drive. So in other words, the front wheel only engages when the back wheel slips. So it's got applications for everything from going over soft surfaces to going downhill, cornering, for example. Not that I'm a downhiller, but I just thought that this might be really worth a try. So I managed to connect with him because he's mostly been making motorbikes like for the US Navy SEALs and things, these incredible all-wheel drive motorbikes, but he has a passion for bicycles. And he made me the first prototype, which I took to Svalbard with my team, and we tested it. And it wasn't perfect, but we thought this has got a lot of potential. There are different reasons why how that could be improved. So then it took me a while to get to the next training session, which was in northeast Greenland. And he made basically fat bike number 2 for that, which had better, wider tires. And so, that's the first bike that's ever cycled in northeast Greenland. And that was an amazing little practice. But it was not really cold enough. It was melting a bit soon, so it wasn't particularly cold. But it was still all learning for me. He has virtually no experience in extreme cold. The third one was up in Arctic Canada, up in the Yukon, up around the mouth of the Mackenzie River up there, right up and over the Beaufort Sea. That was incredible as well, up in Canada. So that was fat bike number 3. And fat bike number 4 was trialled in Iceland. So each time he's been improving it, the technology's got better and better. And so fat bike number 2 now I also used as my sand cycling bike, because cycling on sand is very similar to cycling in snow. So my journey on this sort of journey towards Antarctica is kind of, the hardest thing about it is finding the funding to do a crossing, because it's a long distance. It has to be supported. It's not feasible to carry all of your equipment.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible.
There are so many reasons not to skip breakfast. So many savory, mouth-watering, tasty, delicious beyond all belief reasons. Actually, that last one was pretty convincing. Stop by for a McDonald's breakfast. Mix and match a sausage biscuit, sausage McMuffin, sausage burrito, or hash browns, any 2 for just $2. Price and participation may vary, cannot be combined with combo meal.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
So the expeditions that I've been doing, so I actually have done one on each continent, but the one that we were going to talk about the most was the one on the African continent, which is in Namibia, where I actually made the first bicycle crossing of Namibia's entire coastline. So from the mouth of the Kunene River, which is on the Angolan border, all the way to the mouth of the Orange River, which is on the South African border. It's called the Skeleton Coast, aptly named. It's probably one of the most inhospitable places on Earth.
And tell us why. I hate to talk, push out of the way all these enormous, life-changing, huge adventures to talk about one little experience in comparison that you did, but it's so interesting and so unique for this show. Why did you choose that? And tell us about what it was like out there.
Well, I'd kind of known about the Skeleton Coast before, just through my research, and I remember there was a British explorer who'd walked it back in sort of the mid-90s, and it somehow stuck in my mind, and then I started doing a bit of research. I mean, there's no roads. Like when I say the whole Skeleton Coast, that's like no roads. That's the beach.
You are just, so people know, biking on the beach itself.
The beach, but the beach is like it's wild and it's really remote. So, so out of the 1,000 miles, half of that was absolutely roadless, and that includes cycling also through the Namib Desert, which is the oldest and one of the driest deserts in the world. It's through massive sand dunes, and those sand dunes, when it hits the Atlantic Ocean, they just drop off 100 meters or more into the ocean. So it's unbelievably spectacular. It's wild because it's the desert, and you've got the South Atlantic coming in, and it's got this constant southwesterly, I could say wind, gale. It's probably one of the windiest places there is, most constantly windy places. Great for surfing, a couple of spots there for those who are surfing, and not me, but it's a very treacherous coastline. There are over through history thousands of shipwrecks, and some of them are still there, and it's the most corrosive environment for metal. They're all rusting and gone and disappeared. People died out there, people, animals, everything. They don't survive. And so I, strangely enough, chose to go from north to south for two reasons. One, I thought it would tell a better story with what I'm doing. And two, I'm choosing to go into the wind because I need that mindset for Antarctica, and this was the best way I could do it. No roads, and into the soft conditions, really soft conditions quite often, and into this powerful gale where it was knocking me around. Sometimes I was only going walking speed. It was like that. So I was just trying to work through in my mind. There's no roads, no markers. So it's just like no points of reference. I'm just head down, and really, it seemed tough, but I was expecting the fight as such, and to get through that, and it really helped me work through that journey. Was really great mentally to really test what I can do, and it was just such a privilege, to be able to do it. There's lots of endemic species. There's the desert lions, for example, that live in the north, and they were nearly completely entirely wiped out, but there's now about 130 to 150 of them. They're not a different species, but they're very specifically adapted to those conditions. And so that area we had, luckily there's the world-renowned expert in that area whom we met sort of at the one outer limit of where the lions are. And he sort of was tracking them and sort of knew where they were. So I had to actually cycle past where there was a lioness and cub, which was kind of like, you'll have to see the film.
Unreal. You're cycling. I mean, it's all sand dunes, like you said, just going right into the ocean. And it is literally the only place in the world that lions actively hunt seals, mm-hmm. Correct?
Correct. It's the only place lions actually have known now to get into the water to actually hunt seals. Lions, cats don't do water usually. Cats, so they're just magnificent animals. So I luckily didn't actually get to see one face to face, but what we learnt from Philip Stander, the expert, was just incredible. So there's that, and then there's incredible shipwrecks as well. Some of them is quite haunting. Some of them. And there's one very famous one, the Edward Bolen, which is now about 500 meters off the beach. When it was grounded, it was 500 meters out to sea. So that the beach has grown by a kilometer basically since 1909. So it's just interesting to see how the coastline also changes. Met some incredible people. People don't really live on the coast. There's only a couple of port towns, one Swakopmund, Walvis Bay, Lüderitz, and then Orangumen pretty much, and there's another little one, Henties Bay, and people don't live there for good reason. It's desolate, but when you sort of scratch under the surface, there's so much history. Diamond mining was huge. The diamonds came down the Orange River, so the southern border. They came down from all the way down that river, and then they sort of were flushed out to sea and back onto the coast. So near the Orange River, the diamonds are at the biggest, and then up towards the Kunene River, they can only be like little pinhead size. Not that we actually saw any diamonds, but that was another very special thing about the expedition, because the last 300 kilometers of the journey it's through a forbidden land called the Spurgebiet, which normally they don't allow anyone through, apart from those in that particular diamond mining company. You're not allowed through. And we tried all different ways to, the people that I was working with in Namibia were trying to get permission. And then I just managed to find a way to connect with the chief operating officer. And he basically could see the value out of this expedition. And so he reversed the decision. So that enabled me to do the whole coastline. Yes, I had to go on their road just inland, but the coast there was rocky, so I couldn't have cycled it anyway. And that Spurgebiet's been untouched for 110 years. And so it's mostly not mining, but a buffer zone. 95% of it's like a buffer zone. And now it's a very pristine landscape, of which now that diamond mining companies going to be just mining the diamonds in the water, marine mining, and so they're going to be opening that land up. And that was, so it was just a privilege to be able to go through that. There were ghost towns, diamond mining ghost towns, really just stuff you wouldn't believe. Yeah, so soon it'll be open, or sort of opening up slowly to the public. So that was a very interesting way to. The last 300 kilometers was quite different. So I wasn't struggling over sand dunes, but there were other things that were interesting as well, through there. So other animals like brown hyenas, which are rare. Saw brown hyenas. Lots of stuff, and probably I just loved. Probably the most spectacular bit was the Namib Desert. It's all Namib Desert, but the sort of the high dunes. There's a 500 kilometer section south from Walvis Bay to Lüderitz, which that was the biggest challenge physically of the whole journey, and that's where at the point where I actually had to go in, so up over the dunes and then parallel to the coast, sort of roughly about 10 kilometers in from the coast, and just obviously having to struggle, but I kind of love that sort of struggle, that idea, this pure sand, and it cleans everything, it cleans the tires. It's like it's going through the whole day. It's like it's like a boxing match. Going up, sometimes I have to drag the bike up the soft side of a dune, but then quite often when it's not being disturbed by a vehicle, which is all the time there, then quite often I'm reading the sand, a bit like I have to read the snow in Antarctica, read the sand and work out the best path and be ready to slip at any moment. And that's where the all-wheel drive system's pretty good too, because it's like sometimes you don't know when you're going to slip, but when I do, I have the best chance of pulling the bike out. Doesn't mean I always do, but it's just a little bit better, a bit more grip. So yeah, that bike can tell a few good stories.
That's awesome. Do you mind sharing a story from that Skeleton Coast experience of something maybe unexpected that you came across?
Sharing a story. Wow, gosh, where do we start?
I know. I want to just hear it because it's just like when I see videos and I see pictures, it's just sand. It's just sand, and it's intimidating. The landscape is something I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it is amazing. So, the first 800 kilometers is like not high sand dunes so much. There are a few sand dunes, but basically that's just windswept and just wild, and there's no people. So it was really, so starting off, it's like, I don't know if I can do this sort of thing. I needed to do 50 kilometers a day, which doesn't sound much, but that was taking me 8 hours. It's like, it was just this immense struggle in my mind. So I just had to try to stick to some sort of process to get through each day. There were also things like clay pans and things where we could have got stuck. This was a supported expedition, but it had to be. There's like 500 kilometers between where you can get water.
And where were they following you? Were they on the beach with you?
Yeah, so they could drive, not usually on the beach so much, but actually sort of inland slightly, because it's still just flat sort of sand with sort of little bushes and things like that. So they could, for me, cycling along, it's also dependent on the tide. So when the tide was out, I could actually make reasonable progress along the beach, maybe go even 10 kilometers per hour or something like that, which if you add it up all day, that's not bad. But then that only lasted for maybe 2 hours or less. And then the tide starts coming in, and that means it pushes up and washes over the soft sand. So I'm just pushed out onto the soft sand, which is really hard. Or sometimes I'm just trying to miss the waves, like the wash of the waves. And so I'm sort of not going in a straight line. The beach is kind of scalloped because of the way the waves wash, the water washes the sand, and it's changing by the hour. So it's just this wild place. And I guess that's it, just being in touch with this and having to work. You can't just get on a road and off you go down. You know where it is. You can switch off and look at everything around you. I'm focusing on every single pedal stroke, and I'm constantly trying to work out which is the best path. Is it closer to the water? Is it further up? Is it, I can't afford for the bike to get washed. Then, becoming around and cycling around seals, like they'll just be sleeping out on the beach because, they hunt in the water, but they've got to have a time to rest. So they're often sort of lying out there on the beach, which I used to give a few of them quite a shock.
I'm sure they had no idea what to even think about you. Like, what in the world is this?
So you should see their little faces that go, and then they run. Because on land, they've got to be watchful for like jackals and things, because there's jackals everywhere, and obviously they like to eat the seals as well as the lions and the brown hyenas. So they do have predators on the land as well as in the water. So I guess wasn't a predator, but I was probably pretty scary all the same. In the water, of course, they have sharks and things to worry about. So life's tough if you're a seal.
Life is tough if you're a seal. Absolutely, life's tough when you're you as well. That sounds difficult, being able to, or having to constantly pick the line of where the sand is less sandy, essentially, where it's maybe a little more packed down or a little easier to ride. Yeah. And I'm sure that was, were there times that you couldn't ride along the beach at all? Maybe it was rocky?
I had to go around. So I have to find a path around. And then there were things like, where there's lots of ephemeral rivers, so dry rivers that actually flow underground, and they having to cross the river mouths, it often meant going up a little gorge or whatever and around the little gorge and back again, and there's little rocky headlands obviously you have to go around, so it's not 100% on the beach all the time, but it's generally as close as I can to the beach. With the lions, we weren't to be protected. I had to be protected by Philip's vehicle and my vehicle. So so at that point, they had to. I had to be on the gravel road for that. So, that's fine. It is what it is. It was only 1 or 2 kilometres from the beach anyway. So I had to follow that down. And then the other side of Walvis Bay, as I said, that was beach, and then the very high dunes. So having to find a path through those, and that was really amazing. And to see like the gemsbok out there, the oryx, which is Namibia's national animal, the oryx, and oh my God, they're beautiful out there in the sand as well. Just to see nature. You often don't get to see much nature, but Namibia is actually, out of all the African countries in particular, is probably best on the conservation front. And I think it's the only country in Africa where the numbers of black rhino have increased because they're really protected. And so they have quite a good conservation. I think that cheetahs as well are well protected. So those animals actually have a chance, which is good. And also with the desert lions, I mean, obviously to local people, to the those who are herding cattle, a lion or a cheetah is going to be a problem because they're going to take their livestock. So then they don't like them, of course, and you understand why. So it's just trying to keep them apart, really, keep the lions and the cheetahs apart from the livestock. And that's how they have to protect them.
Did you come across any people out there living, or any villages that or towns where you were able to interact, and what were some of the reactions you had, if so?
Yeah, so away from the coast, so coming up to the start, I'd arranged to stop off at a village called Puros, which is about 150 kilometers from the Cunene River mouth. And it's a Herero and Himba village, and they herd cattle. They're starting to get a little bit of tourism. Very poor. Not all of Namibia is as poor, but there's 12 different ethnic groups in Namibia, and some of them are struggling, and these guys having it tough. And I actually have arranged to do a project which didn't come off then, but we'll still do it in the future, which is going to be electrifying that village with solar power to help them out. So that's still on the cards. It's just so I got to meet the villagers there, and so hopefully I'm going to meet them again. So that was a really fantastic experience. And the Herero women still wear these sort of unusual headgear which represent the horns of a cattle. So they wear these bright coloured clothes with these sort of unusual looking hats. You'll have to look that up too. And Himba, most of the Himba don't get dressed up with their mud in their hair and everything unless it's for tourists these days, but they do that sometimes for tourists. Then the other bit sadder situation in Swakopmund on the fringe of that town. It's the 4th largest town in Namibia. There was a slum that we got to see and got to go in there and meet some of the people and hear their stories. And it's pretty sobering stuff, and to see how they're living. It was just on the edge of the town, and sort of 20 years ago, people just coming there for work. There was no housing, no work, no housing. So it starts as temporary housing, and it just grows to a town of about 20,000 people. And it's just, that was a really heart-wrenching experience, I would say. I'm still looking to help those guys, and they even have problems with a new type of hepatitis E. And I think I might have connected an expert up to go and have a look when COVID's under control there. So Namibia is actually quite a sparsely populated country. There's only under 3 million people there in the whole country. And obviously the coastline doesn't support a lot. But inland, there's a lot of desert as well. So there's the Kalahari Desert as well. But still, it's still a beautiful place. In some ways, it has a bit of a feel of like northwest of Australia. It's sort of a bit like that. Not that you've been there, but it kind of feels. I love that space, and there's something about it. It's a special, really special place.
What do you think the place taught you more than anything?
the place taught me. So the journey, look, the whole time I just keep telling myself I'm so lucky, so privileged to be doing this, to be able to pedal my bike down a beach. How did I end up here? But it was incredible because of the adventure and the chance to explore stuff. Things are changing all the time. The beach is changing all the time. So it taught me how Namibia fits, or how that part of the world fits together. But it also, certainly mentally, that it's really helped me focus, and it's given me a lot more confidence to get through the really tough stuff. I'm not showing off or anything, but I think I know how to do that. I think I know the mental processes, what's required, how to almost trick my mind into getting to the next hurdle. It helps put life in perspective. When you have that kind of a challenge, it helps to put everything else back in perspective, and what's important, and what's possible, what's really possible. I mean, a lot of people look at this and say, how the hell did you do that? But it's all possible when you take it step by step. And it's a little bit about what you expect. And yes, I had a time limit, and yes, I had to do it within a certain time to make it work. But I had to think of it logically, and to think, okay, well, look, if I'm going at 5 kilometers an hour for a while, so be it. I just keep going. It won't last forever. That wind won't be that strong all the time. And you just got to weather the storm, and just hang in there when it's tight, and then just keep looking. There's always something around you that's beautiful, always. So depends how you look at those sand dunes. Those sand dunes could look like a massive wall, if you have to cycle it, especially, or they can just look really stunning and beautiful. And if you choose to take that snapshot and to look at something really beautiful, you'll always get through. Yeah.
Do you struggle with that, or does it come pretty naturally to you to see things in a positive light, or is it a constant battle?
No, it's not a battle. Like I always do that. I think I'm pretty good at doing that now these days. It's have to work through things and just try to picture that if it's something that's a really difficult path, I think that I'm quite quick at being able to turn something around and give it a positive spin, because there is always a way through. Just to jump a little bit, I've just been on another expedition. I'm partway through it, but on day 17, so I've been cycling across Australia from the most easterly tip to the most westerly tip, done 1,500 kilometres. Day 17, just coming into the desert, my wheels got trapped in a mud pan, but it was a dried mud pan, so there was some wheel sort of tracks that were very deep, and it was a silly thing, but I shouldn't have tried to go down that particular track. I should have gone around, and my wheels, my pedals got trapped, and I hit the ground, which was like concrete, and I managed to break my collarbone, which was, well, very, very painful. And I was kind of like on my own. And it is a supported expedition, but I was on my own at the time. Luckily, I had the camera rolling, so you get to see that one day. And just me going through the processes of what to do, sitting down for a bit, not understanding what's wrong. I thought I might have dislocated my shoulder. I didn't sort of hadn't quite worked it out. But then I worked out what I could do. I could rest my bike, my arm. I couldn't lift my bike. I could rest it on the seat. But then I realised if I could just rest it on the handlebars, my hand. I mean, I actually cycled for 2 kilometres. I thought it was about 4, but with a broken collarbone to find my team, sort of thing. So it's amazing what you can do. And then basically when you realise what it was, I had to come face to face at that time with having to stop the expedition, but very quickly I was able to turn it around. And okay, this is now, my recovery is part of the story. So once I understood what was wrong with my arm, and then it was quite a process to get to a hospital. Firstly, we're on the edge of the desert, so it was 90 kilometres back to the nearest town. The Royal Flying Doctors, which we have in Australia, were booked, but they couldn't they couldn't pick me up because they had sort of life-threatening accidents to attend to. And so I had to wait there overnight, and then we had to drive down another 330 kilometres to Broken Hill, where there's a hospital. Once we saw what the break was, and I was able to phone. I have sort of very good medical contacts in Melbourne, so I was able to phone up a surgeon, and he was able to reassure me. And then I thought, okay, I've got 8 weeks, so this is it. This is still part of the story. It's still the recovery of my shoulder is a part of the story, and I just have to treat it that way. So I very quickly turned that around, and yes, it's painful and it's not what I was planning, but there's always a way to turn it into part of the challenge and get through. There'll be a way, hopefully in 6 weeks' time I'll be back out there or so. We don't know for sure, but roughly that amount of time. Very luckily, the filmmakers that were with me and so on are all, and the team are committed to coming back, which is, I'm very, very fortunate because it's not just me that has to be considered here. My work can hold on. So let's get this shoulder better, and everyone's waiting for it to get better. But that's about a positive. Yeah, just being able to turn stuff around, even that serious adversity, that serious pain. But actually, I think I do have the ability to step back, put the perspective on it, and work out how to get better. There's no good just dwelling on what it is. The best way to get better is to actually imagine that path, to keep the options open. It's still got to be adaptable, but to imagine that path, and I guess I'm quite goal-driven in that respect. I like things to work towards. I would get a bit lost if I didn't. I'm not one of those adventurers who just goes out there with no aims or anything. I do need solid things to work towards, for sure.
Well, tell us about you've got the Antarctica expedition out there somewhere. You're making that happen, and to finish this Australian expedition, is there any other major continent or experience that's on your radar that you'd really like to achieve?
Yeah, there are a few. Actually, just before COVID, I was finishing off the series of doing an expedition in each continent, and I was in South America, and I'd gone out there and I'd cycled through. It's basically a journey through the Andes, because I was doing altitude training for Antarctica as well as obviously being a worthwhile expedition. And this one was kind of definitely altitude. So through southern Peru, I was in Bolivia. The idea was to continue down through Bolivia. I was going to cycle up some of the world's highest cyclable paths, some not that cyclable, but the idea was to finish on Ollas del Salado, which is the world's highest volcano and the second highest mountain in the Americas, just under 7,000 meters there, on the border between Chile and Argentina. So I was in Bolivia when it became untenable to continue traveling, and Argentina and Chile just closed their borders, and so time to cut now. So I managed to get the last commercial flight out of Bolivia. So I'd love to be able to finish that one off. There's 6 weeks still left of that. So sometime I'd like to be able to finish that one off. I definitely have my eyes on the Sahara. I have something very worthwhile there. It's more about risk mitigation at the moment with that one. Look, I've got a few.
Wow. Well, Kate, I think you could come on again at any time and talk about any of these experiences. Honestly, we could dive into, everything. You have literally books worth of information and experiences you've seen and stories you'd be able to tell. So, thank you for sharing some about the Namibian coast, the Skeleton Coast, and about some of your adventures coming up. If you could, if things went to plan, just how you wanted, when would you do the Antarctic experience?
Well, look, it's not likely to be this November, December, January, because we don't even know if we're going to be able to leave the country. We're focusing on November 20. Where are we? November 22 would be the middle of November to start. Then December, January. So it's a year and a half away. that's the nearest. But as I said, if I can find the sponsors right now, then we can make something really good with all the marketing and now I've got this path with this first TV series, Diamonds in the Sand, which is about the Skeleton Coast expedition. So I'm really proud of that, because it's one thing to do an expedition, it's another to capture it properly on film, and then it's another we've made a film, and then to make a series out of that, and what I've learned about filmmaking in that process or storytelling, that goes into the next thing. So I've got that one out. We're filming this Australian expedition, making, so there's a lot of filmmaking going on. So with Antarctica now, we're certainly in a position with the filmmakers, etc., to also make something really worthwhile. So for sponsors, it's not just supporting me. That's the first thing, but obviously they can get a lot of value out of it through what we can create. The current series, I think, is already in front of more than 100 million people. So for sponsors, that should be really worthwhile. And hopefully it'll be sold to more as well. So there's that. And obviously with the education program, I've got something working with Dulwich colleges, which is it's about 10,000 kids. So there's a lot of other different values out of that expedition as well as, so if anyone is looking to sponsor, give me a call, contact me.
There you go. There you go. Wonderful. Well, Kate, thank you for joining us again on the Adventure Sports Podcast. We'll have to catch up in a couple years, I guess, we'll just keep it every few years. We'll just book you in to have you on. And where can folks find you? I've got your website and I've got the social media. Is there anywhere else?
No, I mean, if you use my website, you can go kateleeming.com and breakingthecycle.education go to the same place. kateleeming.com is a bit easier to remember, that's all. So you can catch up with all of the expeditions on there. You can contact me through that. And as you say, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I'm on all of those. So that's the best way to get in touch.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mason. Lovely to talk with you.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Find everything okay?
Whenever you shop Meijer, you don't just shop for yourself. You shop for your entire community. You help keep your neighbors well with vaccine clinics and select free prescriptions. You help provide specialized care and comfort through healthcare programs across the Midwest. Whenever you shop Meijer, you help support a wide variety of programs that keep our communities healthy and thriving.
Thanks for shopping with us.
Learn more at Meijer.com.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word: crispy. But also juicy and tender. Maybe crispy, juicy, tender, all one word? Okay, fine. You'll just have to try our crispy chicken sandwich to understand it.
Get a free medium fries and medium soft drink with purchase of any crispy chicken sandwich. Available only on the app.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Price and participation may vary. McDonald's app download and registration required.